Hi everybody, this is Craig Teener for The Mindful Eye and the Daily Critique. Today's image was submitted by Blake, who's an intermediate photographer. Blake says he shot this in his studio. He's going for a glamour look with an enigmatic expression, sort of an in-between expression. Blake shot this with a Nikon D300 using a 16 to 85 millimeter zoom with an effective focal length on this shot at 72 millimeters. At ISO 250, Blake stopped down to f10 and exposed the file for 2/50th of a second. As far as lighting goes, Blake had a 1 by 4 foot strip light overhead. That's just a narrow softbox. You can see it reflected in her eyes right here. And Blake had a large softbox to camera left, and he had a black foam core background. Under the questions and comments section of the image submission form, Blake had a couple of questions. He used Silver Effects Pro software to do a black and white conversion here to mimic an AGFA film. He wanted to know what I thought of that. He also said he wanted soft lighting, but has the lighting gone too soft? A lot to think about here. We'll get back to those questions in just a second. Let's get right into it. One of the things I like right away about this is Blake is using a very simple but very effective element of visual design, which is sort of playing off of both of the major diagonals here with his framing and the gesture in sort of a cross-hatching kind of way. Nice way of having depth in the image and also at the same time creating the feeling of visual cohesiveness or unity. The other thing that I'm enjoying here is this gesture of looking up. I think Blake has nailed sort of this enigmatic in-between expression, but the gesture of looking up starts to suggest all kinds of things. That's its own form of communication, and I think that's powerful and helps the image. The other thing about looking up, just from the standpoint of the model, is that when people look up, they naturally feel more empowered. It's sort of like a bit of body language where your kind of emotional state or attitude can follow the body language. And the other thing about looking up is it tends to make people look more vital for a couple of basic reasons. It stretches the mask of the face, and Blake, we've already talked about, has a big light up here. But even if you don't have lights, if you're outside with people, the lights typically coming from high to low, or just in an interior space, lights are typically in the top of the room. So when people look up, it not only stretches the mask of the face and tends to make them feel more empowered and more comfortable, it also gets a lot of light into their eyes, which is one of the most important parts of a portrait subject. So I'm really liking the fact that she's looking up here. I like the local contrast here, so as far as that conversion goes, I like it. In an area like this where there's the potential for beautiful local contrast, I'm seeing it there, and I'm enjoying that part of the image. Let's talk about the lighting for a second, and that's where I can get into sort of the idea of maybe a perfect world variation. Blake says he wanted soft lighting here, but has it gone too far? And there's a big softbox over here to camera left. And if I was making suggestions for improvement just at the level of the camera, I'd like to see Blake move around to the right a little bit more and get up higher if he's going to work with this gesture. What's happening for me is the combination of shooting in this direction with her head turned this much, almost a profile view, and having a lot of light over here from the softbox, is that this whole area of her face and then this whole area of the neck, two big sort of flat space shapes, have become very dominating in the composition. And for me, this is the part of, this model has a very beautiful face, very beautiful eyes. This is the part of the face that's so beautiful, but I'm being sort of overwhelmed by all this negative space in here. And if we weren't talking about sort of changing camera position, the other thing that I could see trying here if I was going to keep shooting from this camera position is turning this softbox completely off and just working with the strip light and really trying to feather it so that you get to the point where you're just getting light here sort of, and it falls off in a very dramatic way. That would do something else for the image. It not only would cut down on all of this sort of flat negative space shape, it would also create more of a balance. With Blake using the black background, which I think plays really well off of the values in her eyebrows and the dark eyeliner and the tones in her hair, if we're talking about balance, there's a pretty nice feeling of balance going from this corner and top to bottom this direction. But when I start to look in this direction, this is so dark and so simple, and now this down in here doesn't balance with it. If we took that strip light and feathered it and got rid of this softbox and had the light fall off very dramatically to where this starts to go towards black down in here without changing the camera position at all, this might work a little bit better in terms of drawing attention to the most beautiful part of her face and creating more balance on one of the diagonals and sort of top to bottom in the image. If I just had to work with this right here, one of the first things that I would do if we have to talk about sort of cloning and healing and stuff first in the image is I would want to come in and sort of heal out these kind of luminance and value changes right along the edge of her face. Next thing that I would want to do, Blake said he was going for a glamour look here. He's shooting at f10, so he's gotten a lot of detail, a lot of depth of field here. There's a lot of detail in subjects like this and like this that are really sort of drawing my attention again away from the most beautiful part of her face. I would create a huge soft focus kind of filter effect here if I was going for the glamour thing. So let's turn on those two layers first. There's where I smoothed out the edge of the face, and there is a serious kind of soft focus glamour filter on the image. The next thing that I'm going to do is a curves adjustment to sort of kind of create the feeling of the effect that we turn this softbox down and the strip light is falling off more down in here, try to balance that out a little bit, and again continuing to try and draw attention to the most beautiful part of her face. So much more of a low-key feeling now to go with the background. I came in and worked on that even a little bit more, and then here are a few other changes. I came in and got rid of a little bit of the dark under the eye and opened up that eye, and just continuing to try and draw attention to the part of the face that I like the most. And then what I'm going to do on these last two curves layers is add more low end and more value to her mouth to try and create more movement just along that diagonal of the part of the face that I like quite a bit. And this is where we started, and this is where we ended up so far in this image. I mean, what's really interesting, if we just do something real quick, just talking about balance, let's just come in and go to image canvas size, and let's make this an inch border all the way around that's black. And so black is the background color, and just hit OK. You can really sort of see just from doing this how having that black to play off of the black at the top really changes the way you not only look at this image, but even the way you think about her expression. And if you were going to frame this with black, then clearly you kind of have to start working on these areas, and you have to create more of a balance along the edge of the frame. But I just wanted to show you that in terms of thinking about potentially the light falling off down here in the image. Having said all that, I love the way Blake has worked with a strip light to get light into the eyes. I love the idea of looking up. I think Blake has nailed sort of the enigmatic expression part of this. I love working on the major diagonals. Beautiful model, beautiful light in the eyes. And we want to thank Blake for sharing this beautiful portrait with us on the Mindful Eyes Daily Critique.